Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're going to be reviewing Starcastle by the band Starcastle.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
But before I start talking about this self-titled album, let me firstly tell you all that tomorrow, Thursday, September the 8th at 1 PM EST, we will be doing yet another live stream. It was a blast last time. I had so much fun. Many of you also had so much fun. Of course, the rules are simple. I'm gonna take song recommendations. They have to be prog and they have to be less than 7 minutes long. Other than that, we can listen to whatever you want and it's gonna be so fun, so stay tuned. We're gonna start on time this time and it's gonna be so nice. So if you enjoyed it last time or you weren't there last time, you can definitely join it right now. But anyway, let's move on to talking about some of my favorite bits from this album. So I have a lot to say about today's album and I don't really know where to start, so I guess I'm gonna start at the beginning. Yeah, that sounds right. So Starcastle are an American band coming from Champaign in Illinois, and they formed back in 1969 under the name Pegasus, and then they renamed themselves to Mad John Fever before finally settling on the very proggy name of Starcastle. And jumping all the way through to 1974, these guys broke through and signed two record companies, of course being Epic Records and the infamous CBS Records. And even before releasing any albums, these guys were proven to be very favorable among the masses with a lot of playtime, especially in the St. Louis part of Missouri. So when finally in 1976 these guys released their self-titled debut album, it managed to garner some pretty notable success and worldwide play. Now at this point of the review, there are probably two types of people watching this review right now. Those who know about this band and this album and those who don't. And for anyone who doesn't know about this album and this band, this might come as a surprise to you, but these guys are today mostly known as being probably the biggest copycats of Yes ever. So maybe so far for all of you who aren't acquainted with them, it sounded like these guys were just creating their own original material and basically succeeding from there, when in actuality their runtime was mostly coming down to actually perfecting the copycat sound, and specifically that of Yes. But copycat bands exist everywhere. I can easily name a copycat band and even more of Pink Floyd, King Crimson, Jethro Tull, Genesis. It's really not that hard to do. So why are Starcastle being held so high as the biggest copycats basically ever? Well, I think that the reason for it has to do with the fact that they've managed to really accurately recreate the Yes sound, the classic Yes sound, and that's mainly a point of a lot of disagreements between people who know this album. You see, Starcastle's music, and specifically this debut of theirs, is considered by many to be such an unoriginal album because everything that it has on it is almost a direct copy of the Yes sound, and while that might be unfavorable with many critics and casual listeners, it is also not that of a negative thing in the eyes of many, and people think that maybe the fact that they sound a lot like Yes is actually a big positive. You see, let's face it all, for anyone who likes Yes's music from their classical era, let's say about Fragile to, let's say, going for the One, we can definitely say that their sound is one that we mostly yearn for, and a lot of us would have loved to have yet another Yes album from that era. If tomorrow someone would come up with a hidden tape that was lost from the eyes of the masses for all these years, which contains a new Yes album from the 70s, everyone would just go berserk on it, because honestly that's what a lot of us really want to happen. But of course that never really happened, but something that did happen was the creation of this album by Starcastle, which by all regards manages to capture the Yes sound one-to-one. But one thing to note, and this is quite important, you see, when this album came out in 1976, Yes were still going strong. Nobody really thought that prog was gonna see a decline in a short while. Nobody really thought that Yes were gonna completely change and overhaul their sound to sound nothing like what they used to sound in the past, and people weren't really thinking about the fact that Yes maybe wouldn't last forever. And thus I can definitely see how people who heard this album back when it came out or around these years just thought of this being as a lesser copy of Yes. But now in the long run, people like me who were born after this entire saga basically concluded, I can listen to this album and say definitely that I'm happy that it exists, because it gives me just one more Yes album to really delve upon, even if it wasn't really made by Yes. So what is this album like? Well, it opens up with a fantastic track called Lady of the Lake. Now I'll have to stop everything here and point out something that I thought about. About, let's say, 100 episodes ago, we reviewed Lady of Shalott by Atmosphera, an Israeli band that also happened to be quite the Yes copycats as well. And the thing about that one and this one is that they hold a lot of similarities, of course both sounding a lot like Yes, and the two of them having the first track on the album with a pretty similar name, of course being Lady of Shalott and Lady of the Lake. But yeah, anyway, this first track, Lady of the Lake, acts as this sort of hook for this album. If you like what you're hearing right here, you're gonna love the rest, and if you think that it's just a shameless copy of Yes, then you might not want to stick for the rest of this journey. But to me, this first track completely blew me away. I was just unbelieving how well these guys managed to capture the classic Yes environment. And when I say environment, I literally mean everything, from the tone of the instruments to the vocal harmonies and to the fucking lyrics themselves. It is unimaginable the amount of effort that these guys have put into actually sounding like the band that they so long to sound like. And you know, I really can't blame them when I come to think of it. These guys probably loved Yes so much, and the only thing that they really wanted to do is just create something that sounds like their favorite band, and by God did they succeed, with the only major difference that I can really find is that the vocals really don't match that of John Anderson's, which are of course very hard to match, and overall they would sound more like a very nasally and a bit of a sore throat John Anderson. But you see, the vocals on here are done specifically by Terry Lauderell, of course with the accompaniment of the backing vocals over the entire band. And the way that the mixing and balancing of the vocal harmonies is done on here is quite remarkable in my opinion, because despite not sounding and having the same voices as the original Yes group, in various ways of creating harmonies they were able to capture the same feeling as the Yes harmonies as well. And honestly, after a short while of listening to this album, you kind of just forget that it sounds unlike Yes and you start accepting it for what it is, because it is almost as equally good. And now here's the thing, maybe the deal breaker for why I believe this is a good album. While they do recreate the Yes sound and Starcastle aren't original in that regard, they managed to create their own unique compositions. Nothing on here feels like it is just a slightly shifted version of another Yes song. I don't feel like there's any Close to the Edge 2 on here, or Heart of the Sunrise too on here. Everything is entirely original, yet it sounds exactly what you'd expect Yes to sound like. And this ability, despite all their copycat tendencies to create something new on here, it's just remarkable, honestly, and I feel like I'm treading no new grounds in this review, and I'm basically stating the same exact thing, and it's basically my desperate attempt of trying to reconvince some of you people that maybe have a grudge for this one. But overall, I enjoyed probably almost everything on this entire album, with Elliptical Seasons being a fantastic song that just continues on the trend of sounding good as the first. Forces as well is a fine track that kind of goes in a more rockier version of Yes, which is more found on their later works, as well as Stargate and Sunfield, which is a very interesting combo of two songs that work fantastically together, and maybe, just maybe, they shouldn't have been separated from one another. And while towards the end of this album with the two last tracks I kind of started losing interest in this one, it doesn't really matter. This is still a great album, which might not hold to the same heights as Yes's original music, but definitely sounds a lot like it and is what I consider to be a hidden gem. So if you're not entirely repelled by copycat bands and you can appreciate someone just being inspired by their heroes and creating similar music, then you might actually love this one, because I know that I did. So I absolutely adore this cover. I think it is one of the best that I've seen on the series so far, and I really do mean that. A lot like Roger Dean's cover for Yes, this one also has the same feel of the fantastic, yet it goes to showcase something different. While most of Roger Dean's artworks are mostly focused on the foreground and the earth, this one actually features more of the sky, which is something that is unregarded in most of Roger Dean's paintings. Of course, here we have the sky with a very interesting ombre that kind of gives off the same vibe as the background for Close to the Edge, and of course then we get to see the stars, from which we actually zoom outwards. We start realizing that these aren't stars, but instead they're just castles floating on clouds. And this unique representation of what stars actually are is just fantastic, and it reminds me of a painting that I drew about 3 years ago, in which I drew cannons firing cannonballs on clouds in order to represent thunder. And the execution of this cover is just beautiful. The colors, the balance, the way that everything is drawn, it looks both realistic and, you know, unbelievable fairy tale as well. It is just so good, and I have the utmost appreciation for this one, and much like the album, it does aim to copy some of the Yes signature look, but as well as doing something entirely original. So this is a great album, and I know that many people would rate this one as low as it can be, but I really don't think that it's necessary, because overall, if I didn't know Yes, I would still say that this is a fantastic album, so that's what it is. And doing things objectively, I will definitely give this one a rating of 8 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow, because we're going to be listening to Radio Chaos by Roger Waters. I of course want to thank my lovely supporters over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Wallum, Wrist of Kings, and Lindsay Haycox. You guys are just the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my About page. But that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.